I hated sales calls with a capital H until I understood how I could turn my sales calls into high converting, empowered decision processes that made anyone I talked to a mega believer. Now, quick backstory that I tell anyone who will listen is that sales were never my strong suit. That was until I realized that I wasn't actually bad at sales. I was just bad at convincing people. It was an expensive lesson to learn that took me into the trenches of hiring a full time sales team, spending tens of thousands on ads, and having endless conversations in the DMs that just left me a hot mess, exhausted, and feeling desperate for something better. But it was all worth it in the end to figure out that I could invert the sales process by understanding these three core factors that not only made my sales calls convert like crazy to the tune of 90% of the people I talked to turning into a client, but my client success rate skyrocketed. And my clients were ranting and raving all over the internet, sharing their success. And the people I was getting on calls with were so blown away by what they were gaining from the call alone that I was creating mega believers who, regardless of whether or not we worked together, would tell everyone and anyone about me. And people would get off calls and tell me things like, I've never bought so fast in my life. That was amazing. And I just want to learn to do what you just did because that was insane. So I'm spilling the secrets on how we turn things upside down to create a mega believer sales process that both me and my prospects loved without high pressure tactics or a full calendar. Now, hey, and welcome back to the Business Real Talk. Now, in our last episode, we talked about how to use treasure map marketing to make the buying process easy and fast. And boy, was that a good one. I highly suggest going back and listening to that as I go into more detail about micro decisions, which is something I'll touch on inside of this episode. But this episode is all about sales and going in and taking a deep dive on sales calls and the specific techniques that we created to have the most empowered decision process that really made me go from hating sales conversations as an introvert who refused to use the sleazy tactics that everyone was teaching to loving sales calls and finding the most effective technique that would allow me to connect with prospects on a quick 20 to 30-minute call and make them feel so excited about buying from me that they couldn't wait to say yes. Now, I'm going to be real. I have such a hot take on sales calls because we're living in a time where, as business owners, we're asking people to make life-changing decisions without a human connection. And it feels so disconnected. And as buyers, we're so burnt out by the high pressure sales process that we're often buying programs without fully knowing if it's actually the right fit. It can feel like a total lose lose. But here's the deal and my hot take: if you're offering high touch or high ticket offers that get direct support from you, you should be getting on sales calls. Now, let me explain. Let's say right now you sign a client who, on paper and through the qualification questions that you asked, seem great, only to start working with them and realize it's not a good fit because A, they needed something completely different than the support of what you're offering. B, they didn't really have the necessary requirements to truly be successful working together. Or C, they just aren't a personality match. It becomes a nightmare. And listen, nobody, I mean, nobody wants to get on dozens of sales calls with people who have zero intention of buying. That's a recipe for burnout. So let's start with this perspective shift. Sales don't happen on sales calls. The intention isn't to fill your calendar with back to back calls, putting on your best face while wasting an hour trying to show someone the value in your program, only for them to turn and say that they're going to hold off, or worse yet, faking their excitement just to get off the phone with you and ghost you. And the alternatives suck. It's either hiring a sales team, diverting the problem to someone else, which is just an expensive delegation process, or creating a high pressure sales environment where you strong arm people into buying, even if they're down to their last dime, aren't a good fit, or anything else because you have KPIs to meet, damn it. Or you eliminate sales calls and instead try to use your marketing to convert clients, creating an exhausting cycle of conversion events and a revenue roller coaster where when one event doesn't produce the expected results, you're always jumping into the next thing. Now, there's always a trade-off, and it's often hidden beneath all the big promised results that make it sound like sales are completely effortless and no work is required. Now, either you are essentially allowing anyone and everyone to join in your programs, regardless of if you can actually get them results, and it's an expensive way to get chargebacks, bad fit clients, and etc. Or you're eliminating sales calls altogether and instead trying to use marketing to convert clients, creating an exhausting cycle of conversion events and leaving you on a revenue roller coaster when one event doesn't actually produce the expected results. Now, here's the deal. There's always a trade off when we walk away from those sales calls, and it's often hidden beneath all the big promised results that make it sound like sales are completely effortless and there's no work required from you. And we see it with big name gurus where you're either allowing anyone and everyone into your programs, regardless of whether or not you can actually get them results, and it becomes an expensive way to get chargebacks and bad fit clients. Or you're elongating the sales process because, in order for someone to feel confident in buying into a high touch or high ticket offer without having a live interaction, it's going to require some work to build that level of trust, which either looks like months or years in your ecosystem if they don't get annoyed and move on to someone else first. Or there's tons of back and forth in the DMs trying to replicate the sales call process and get people to start buying. My whole point, there's a give and take in anything. And I find that a lot of people don't understand all the points before making the right decision for them. Because let me be clear, there is not a one size fits all approach. The key is to understand the intention behind the action and build a strategy and the systems that drive that intention. But if you're here, that means that you're creating a high transformation offer that requires some due diligence in order to understand that that person is the right fit. And fit matters. And after 13 years in business, there seems to be a lack of discernment when it comes to the promises we make and how we ensure that we can actually deliver on them. I can't even tell you the countless number of horror stories I've heard from people who spent tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to work with mentors that promised them the moon, where they would flaunt their success loudly and often, telling people that they too could have that version of success. And they'd run these quote unquote high touch programs with a hefty price tag, and you could join during their elaborate launch or live events. And people would buy to the tune of mentors racking in 100, 250, and 500K in a single launch. And then that success would be the next thing that they would brag about to fill their next program. But behind the scenes, those people buying felt bamboozled and catfished. They joined a program thinking it was going to be everything they needed, and it was just a course on wheels. And not to be the negative Nancy, but the question becomes, how can people make these big, bold promises without actually ensuring that it's a good fit for you? The burden of choice right now is on you and only you. You're expected to know your problem. You're expected to know what will happen and what will not happen behind the scenes. You're expected to somehow figure out or blindly trust that their process will work for you, even though they've been taught to keep their process a secret. It's a sales process that's been fundamentally built on holes, purposeful holes that leave you intrigued and buying, and the burden of that decision being fully on you. The reality is, the burden of fit and the ability to make a promise and deliver on that really comes down to both parties, you and me. All of my high touch, high ticket offers are by invite only. Why? Because it's my duty as a responsible business owner to ensure that I can deliver on the results that I'm promising. That to me, as a transformational business, matters. And it's an integral part of our process that ensures we drive results and create a powerful reputation and a sustainable business. This ensures that we put a process in place, start to finish, that begins with the pre selling, decision based approach that sets leads up to sell themselves. So they're getting on sales calls with that buying intent. And it sets us up to get on that call to ensure that it's a mutual fit and that if we believe that we can actually get you results, an invitation is made. Everything about our process flips things on its head. So, my question to you becomes, how are you ensuring that it's a mutual fit? What systems are in place right now in your business to ensure that you can deliver on your promise before inviting someone in? This is the road to sustainable growth. Instead of rising the ranks of people who brag about not getting on sales calls, only to see their business fall apart because they haven't prioritized ensuring fit matters. And make sure you stick around because I'm going to share with you how we structure our calls using what we call the inverted yes formula to turn your sales calls into empowered decision spaces where you're creating those mega believers. So, how do you have high converting sales calls that ensure you're signing the best fit clients and seeing amazing conversions without being on endless calls? It's about understanding the role of the sales call in the conversion process. I want to take a second and ask you to unlearn everything that you know about sales calls. The high pressure, no stakes calls that make people want to cry, the hour-long teaching or coaching calls done in hopes that people will see the value in what you do and buy, the two call closes where you tell them about your offer on one call and hope that they get on another one so you can pitch them. Any of those other things that have made you cringe or secretly hate sales calls, even if you still take them, I want to ask you to take a second to remove those outdated constructs that rule your business. We're going to redefine these fitting calls altogether. And it starts with setting a new intention and understanding how sales calls ultimately fit into the bigger picture. Now, let's lay things out. Your marketing is meant to pre sell. Simply put, that means that people are getting the information needed to say, yes, this is exactly what I need, or no, this is not what I need before they get on a call. See, previously it's been that people are booking calls to get more information. The call has been where they can learn more about the process, how it works, etc. And people were bound to a call in order to see if this was even what they needed. But the reality is that creates a stressful buying process because it's hard to learn and decide at the same time. Our brain struggles to do both of those things at the same exact time. Now, instead, by creating a marketing process that arms them with the necessary information, AKA to learn, and then using your sales call to help them apply that information in a way that is specific to them, we're allowing them to make faster, more empowered decisions, which is what we're all about. Fast and empowered decisions come from learning happening before that and having the space they need to achieve that, while the applying is happening with you directly on a call. And it looks like this. Your marketing is going to feed them the information that's going to checkmark the following micro decisions at a bare minimum. Number one is, what problem is this solving? And is this the problem that I need solved? Number two is, how does this work? Number three is, what makes this different and why does that matter? AKA, this is how they weigh their alternatives. So that by the time they've been through your marketing, they should have fully decided that yes, you are solving the problem that they need. Yes, they know exactly how it works. And yes, I understand how this is different and why that's important to me. Now, the sales call will allow them to bring it full circle. It's the icing on the cake. They come to the call already having made up their mind, and the call is just a place for them to solidify or invalidate that decision. The goal of the sales call, therefore, becomes a reiteration of the micro decisions that we shared above, but now translated in a very specific way to that person that you're speaking to, and to answer the micro decision of, will this work for me? This is the nail in the coffin, so to speak, question. They've bought into the fact that you have what they need. The question now becomes about the logic and emotion around validating how it's going to apply to them specifically. Regardless of the decision that we're making, we want to ensure it makes sense for us. It's like seeing the most beautiful dress you've ever seen and asking, will this fit my body? I call this the snowflake effect. We're all different and unique. And like snowflakes, you never find two of the same. And what fits one person may not fit the next. And our brain knows that. And it will rationalize all the reason that it can and cannot work to a certain extent. Now, in marketing, we can address this in a broad manner, but ultimately, we're leaving it up to the buyer to figure it out if it's going to work for themselves. And if they've been burned in the past, their brain creates the reasoning that this may not work. And if they have even an ounce of fear because they're stressed, again, that reasoning jumps in to say, now's just not the right time. And if they're wavering on whether this is or isn't what they need, now they start to say, can I even really afford this? Each of these unresponded to individualized needs are creating more bullets on the cons of their pros and cons list until they finally decide that it's just not right. Whereas on a sales call, we have the capacity to react to each individual's needs, desires, and the things that ultimately make them a snowflake, allowing us to identify and address exactly how we resolve their specific needs. So now their brain can instantly validate that this can and will work for them, which means objections never have the chance to surface as objections. They're resolved before they even have a chance to see the light of day. Not to mention that the personalization process on the sales call itself, your prospect is now able to visualize exactly what it would look like for them if they joined your program. So now not only have you eliminated objections before they even came up, but now you've created a hyper-personalized visual for them of what they can achieve when working with you. And it's hard to get that out of their brain, creating an eager buying process. No pressure, no objection handling, no convincing, just a congruent process that builds on decisions naturally and easily. This is why I tell people that it's about looking at things holistically. Countless businesses I see are fixing leaks without looking at the whole plumbing system. If your sales calls aren't converting, you're getting ghosted on or before those calls, or you're speaking to people who are unready or unqualified, it's not a sales call problem or that you're just not naturally good at sales. It's that you haven't set up the client acquisition process so it builds upon each other to create the conversion. Now it's time for the moment that we've all been waiting for. Here's my drum roll. It's what I call the inverted yes formula. And it's the hidden key to creating mega believers who love buying from you, tell everyone about you, all from a singular sales call, and all without you adding any pressure or filling your calendar with dozens of calls. Let me start with another hot take. This is an episode that seems to be full of them. Most people don't actually hate sales calls. They hate getting on calls with people who don't buy. And I get it. Nobody actually wants to feel like they're wasting their time or dragging people to try and buy. So let's start with another perspective shift, one that I'm shocked isn't a norm. Last week, I had a woman who messaged me saying, I'd love to learn more about how I can work with you. And I invited her directly to a growth optimization call. And suddenly things went silent in the DMs until I said, I'm happy to chat here first. Her response is what shocked me. She said,
I'd love to get on a call, but I don't want to feel pressured to buy, and I don't want to waste your time.
What? First off, nobody, and I mean nobody, is a waste of my time. I realize this is counterintuitive to what most people think or are told, but personally, I'll happily get on a call with someone who's considering working with me, even if they say, I don't know if I can join right now. Why? Number one, I value people. I'm a big believer that if I can help you on that pathway to working with me and seeing if I'm actually the right fit, I am more than happy to chat with you. As a beautiful and amazing side effect, this ultimately creates mega believers because on that call, I'm able to help them understand their real problem. And sometimes that real problem isn't something that I can help them with. And I'll let them know that. And if it is something I can help with, but I feel like they need certain things in place first, then I'll let them know that as well and have them wait until those things are actually ready. I put their success before my bank account. Number two is that it matches the three checks. Determining that someone is a good fit comes down to understanding the three things that drive success: what you bring to the table, what I bring to the table, and what the program brings to the table. All three matter, and it's not all on my clients to bear that responsibility of knowing whether or not they're joining a program that's going to get them the results they need or solve the problem that they need to be solving. It's really about creating that three-way fit. And so often we're seeing these 7 and 8 figure coaches who talk about creating these high touch programs, ultimately only understanding that they're not actually putting anything in place that allows them to ensure that the person they're working with is actually someone they can deliver that promise to. That's why it's so important to understand those three different checks and know if you're actually bringing in people that you can drive results for, knowing how you can drive results for them, and understanding which and how the program actually helps drive that, and ultimately knowing which and how that program's actually going to drive results for them. So you're creating the right fit for the right person. And the third thing is that I don't actually ask people to make decisions on the call. Shocking, I know, but I believe in empowered decision making, and that means not feeling pressured to sign up while I'm staring you down. The key is to help people make decisions that feel like the only logical answer is yes. So, how do we do this? How do we get people to want to say yes without us needing to include all that pressure? It's what I call the inverted yes formula. Now, it does three things. Number one, it validates that confirmation bias of the decision that they've made already before that call. Number two, it creates instant authority and rapport that feels like you're instant besties. And number three, it removes the buying pressure and creates a natural eagerness. And there's just three things that allow you to achieve that: diagnose, shift, and resolve. Now, we teach all of our clients this process, and it starts with that diagnostic process that allows your calls to specifically diagnose the accurate problem that we're solving. This is not only creating instant rapport and authority, but it's ensuring that we indeed are the right fit. This also sets the tone for the entire rest of the process and how we build upon this. Through the diagnostic, we now have an opportunity to shift their belief and focus on solving the right problem. Imagine that you spent months on something only to find out that it's not actually what you needed. The inverted yes formula allows you to create a soft landing for this information and create a clarity bump that makes people so excited about finally being on the right path, which leads to and sets us up for the resolution. Your solution is the resolution when it makes sense. The entire intent is that you're setting up the process so that now you can be their knight in shining armor and solve the problem. So that you can be able to say, I have the missing piece that you need, and here's how it fits. This gives their nerves and their brain the resolution it needs from the excitement we created with clarity. It's like wrapping it all up in a perfect little bow. And now their brain is firing on all cylinders and they're so excited. They have a huge smile across their face saying, yes, yes, I'm ready. This is exactly what I need. No pressure, no spending hours on calls, no booking your calendar solid with people who don't actually want to buy. Your entire process is building up to this yes. And I get so pumped about talking about this because it's what makes me so obsessed with my Easy Yes method. It's a holistic approach to an easier and faster decisions that go from cold leads to sign me up and all the way through this was the most life-changing program I've ever joined. Now, here's how we do it. It starts by winning the market and revolutionizing the industry. It's not about competing for attention, it's about making competition irrelevant and creating that inbound demand where clients are chasing you and happily paying without hesitation. We do this by helping you develop your innovative gap methodology that targets those ready buyers and showcases your innovative approach as the only solution to high end buyers. This step alone allows my clients to charge 5 to 10 times more and have clients lining up to work with them. Next, we automate conversions by getting leads to sell themselves using the Netflix effect. This is that pre selling process. It's done using our bingeable decision system. This innovative approach focuses on accelerating the natural decision process through a proprietary sales psychology technique, and it combines it with the power of bingeability to make saying yes the only logical solution. This step turns cold leads and lurkers into hot paying clients within hours or days so you can focus on serving clients instead of convincing leads. Now, lastly, is our pure profit strategy. This is where we leverage proactive programming to set your clients up for world class results at scale so that you can leverage your two best and most profitable client sources, retention and referrals. This is the power of understanding and having an inverted yes formula. And I want to invite you to the next step with us. If you're ready to see how we can apply the Easy Yes method within your business so that you can get leads to sell themselves and you become a market of one, I want to invite you to book your call directly with me. On this growth optimization call, we don't use a high pressure process, but it's a space for us to be able to acknowledge and diagnose where your actual breaking points are and exactly how we can solve for those using the Easy Yes method. So if you're ready to book your call, head on over to easyesleads.com/call. But if you're new around here and want to learn how the Easy Yes method works to get leads to sell themselves using the Netflix effect, head on over to easyesleads.com to check out our free mini series that shares this exact 3-step process for you to check out now. And as always, we love and appreciate if you could just take one quick minute out of your busy day to rate and share this podcast with a friend so that we can turn this message into a movement. But until next time, here's to keeping it real.